Take your seat. Court is in session. Yeah, the Honorable Ed Reyes and Herb Wesson presiding. Well, Mr. Reyes is honorable.
In another life.
In another life. Maybe our sons. Anyway, I want to welcome everybody to this morning's committee meeting. I'm joined today by my dear friend Ed Reyes. And Mr. Reyes, we had a great day yesterday. You know, technically, the Lafayette Park is in my district, but a lot of the individuals, kids from your area, use it. And we had a grand opening for our first skate park in that area with Ron Deerdick, the professional skateboard, whatever, and he and Carl's Jr. Donated the money, and the city Rec and Park was able to sign some agreement that allowed them to build the skate park. And the reason why I wanted to tell you this, you know how long it took? 2 months. So we need to look at
10 years.
No, it took two. They were Rec and Parks were approached in December. In December. And this is 8,500 square feet. It is designed, you know, we all, and I'm sure people that are here today, some of them we get complaints of the young people that are riding the skateboards in front of banks and on the little steps and on the rails. That's what they built there. I mean, it's no more the bowl that you just no. So anyway, had I known that it was going to be such a huge thing, I definitely would have asked you. I thought it was just a little, you know, I was blown away.
I'm just glad it got done, and to activate that park. I mean, you had the basketball, you had soccer, but sometimes we miss what are the trends, and that whole movement amongst young people. I see them around the Chinatown rail station. You see them everywhere.
Yeah.
And to have them in a place where at least we could monitor and create programs. Congratulations.
No, I think maybe it's congratulations for both of us, and maybe we should come up with some kind of contest, something where we have kids go and we give them awards for, you know.
I think my skateboard days are over.
No, not. Okay, now I was gonna say not us, but I will share this with you. My kids watch this Rob Dyrdek, who's has a reality television show on MTV. At first, his show was called Rob and Big. Big was his bodyguard, who was like a 450-pound brother, and they had all kinds of adventures. And this now, it's called the Fantasy Factory, where they do bizarre things as well, but at the end of the day, they're always trying to help people. So we get there yesterday, and the mayor came, and I look to my right, and I see this giant skateboard. No, giant. It was the size of a bus. So I figured that this skateboard was a prop. Rob, the mayor, and I, and the president of CKE Foods rode this giant skateboard down the hill. And Larry, you should know, you know your boss, he's game, our mayor's game for anything. So I used to skateboard. So we're on the skateboard, and the mayor is doing this, and then all of a sudden the mayor says, "Stop, it's time to stop, it's time to stop." We stopped. Anyway, with that said, again, welcome everybody to today's committee hearing. I am joined by Mr. Reyes, and it's my understanding that Ms. Perry will be here momentarily. We've got, I think, 2 items that there might be a discussion on. The rest of the items, I believe, we can deal with as if they were on consent. So, Mr. City Attorney, what we're going to do is we're going to roll through the consent items. We'll do it as a communique from the chair, and when Ms. Perry does come, we will afford her an opportunity to vote on all the items, and then we will send those items to council, supported by this, if I'm lucky, knock on wood, supported by this committee. With that, Ms. Barclay, have you seen any new baby pictures or anything in the last day or so?
As a matter of fact, I have.
Would you like to describe what baby you saw and how drop-dead, gorgeous, attractive he might have been?
I can't do better than that. It's your lovely grandson. He's adorable.
I showed you that? Oh.
He has your eyes.
Anyway, welcome, Ms. Perry. We now have a quorum, so let's start out, Ms. Barclay, with item 2.
Item 2 is a report from the Community Redevelopment Agency and the Chief Legislative Analyst relative to an owner participation agreement with 11055 Cumston LLC for the construction of 25 residential units.
Okay, then on item 2, we'll adopt the CLA report. That brings us to item 3.
Item 3 is a report from the CRA and the City Administrative Officer and a resolution relative to the use of funds for Menlo Park Apartments project.
Okay, item 3, we'll adopt the CAO report. Item 4.
Item 4 is a report from the CRA and the CAO and a resolution relative to an environmental action and a loan agreement with Amcal Multifamily Housing, Inc. for the Mosaic Affordable Housing Development.
Item 4, we'll adopt the CAO report. Item 5.
Item 5 is a report from the CRA, the CAO, and the CLA relative to amending the CRA's fiscal year 2009 budget to transfer $14.6 million to the Education Revenue Augmentation Fund and deleting $33.6 million in projected bond issuance proceeds.
Okay, on item 5, we'll adopt the joint CAO and CLA report, bringing us to item 6.
Item 6 are reports from the Community Development Department and the CAO relative to executing a loan agreement with RAD Ventures to provide acquisition funding assistance in the development of an office building project.
Okay, then on that, we'll adopt the CAO report. Alan, that brings us to what item?
Item number 7, sir.
Okay, just checking. Item 7, Ms. Barclay.
Item 7 is a report from the Los Angeles Housing Department and the City Administrative Officer and a resolution relative to the issuance of tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds for the 36th Street and Broadway Apartments project.
Okay, item 7 will adopt the CAO report. Item 8.
Item 8 is a motion, Alarcon Cardenas, relative to proposed formation of the Pacoima Business Improvement District. An amendment has been provided to the clerk to better facilitate the city clerk's acceptance and expenditure of funds to form this bid. We recommend approval of the motion as amended.
Okay, then we will adopt the motion as amended. Item 9.
Item 9 is a motion, Perry Garcetti, relative to converting a capacity building loan to the Little Tokyo Service Center to a grant.
Mr. City Attorney, who are the makers of this motion?
This is Honorable Councilmember Perry and Garcetti.
So what is your recommendation? What do you think we're going to do on this? This is a test. Don't fail.
I believe we would recommend approval.
He's right. Okay, on that, we'll adopt that motion. That brings us to item 10.
Item 10 is a motion, Reyes Perry, relative to addressing financing gaps in the MacArthur Park Metro Apartments Phase A and the Andalusia Heights projects. We have also provided an amendment to the clerk on this item that would allocate the agency funds to MacArthur Park Phase B to offset Los Angeles Housing Department funds for Phase A to make sure that that project can keep going on schedule. We recommend approval of the motion as amended.
Alan, without objection, what will we do on this one?
Approve the item, sir.
Okay, we'll adopt the motion with the amendment.
With the amendment, yes.
Brings us to item 12. In fact, item 12, we're going to continue. I have a note that says we'll continue item 12 to March 18th, so you don't have to read it. Save your breath. We'll read it on the 18th.
Thank you, sir.
That brings us to, and then so where it relates to those items, without objection, they'll be deemed approved. That brings us to item number 1. If you could please read that item.
Item 1 is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Ms. Shirley Friedman to the Relocations Appeal Board for the term ending April 2nd, 2009.
Please come forward. Mr. Bimbo, I see you've got one of your Cracker Jack staff. You got Ninos in the back. Ninos, welcome. Whenever he's here, I feel okay. Good morning.
Good morning, council people.
why don't you, if you would, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your desire to serve on the Relocation Appeals Board.
With pleasure. My name is Shirley Friedman. I'm a native Angelino that was born in Boyle Heights. I now reside in Valley Village, California. It was my privilege to be on the Relocations Appeals Board under Mayor Reardon for 9 years. Now it will be my pleasure to serve again to the City of LA. I do volunteer work for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department as a chaplain at the Los Angeles County Jail in Linwood for women.
Okay, wonderful. Do you think there will be, I mean, you said you served during the Reardon administration.
Yes, sir.
Do you anticipate that there might be some, I mean, have things changed? Will the job offer different challenges than it did before, or what do you think?
I'm assuming that it's the same board as it was then, and the challenges were somewhat slim, somewhat interesting. It was a board that met only when there was appeals made by city people for dollar amounts and relocating their properties before it went to a CRA hearing. And I did have the fortunate opportunity of serving under Mr. Bimbo.
Oh, did you now?
Yes, I did.
Okay, wonderful. How long, and this is just total nosiness, how long have you been a chaplain?
About 5 years now.
Wonderful. Any questions?
Just want to say thank you. Thank you for your service.
My
and your-
pleasure.
your support.
Thank you. And then, without objection, we will recommend to the full council that you be approved. And is that going to take place today?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll see you in a little while.
Look forward to it.
Pleasure,
Thank you very
pleasure to
much.
meet you. Okay. I do have one card from the public. Chuck, I forgot all about you. So before we go to the next item, we're going to do public hearing, and I'd like to call up Chuck Tenon. Chuck, good morning.
Good morning.
You know, the city elections are coming up soon. The mayor made big promises to drive down crime and gang violence, to promote economic development in South LA and neglected, underserved communities that have the highest unemployment rates and poverty in the city, and most important, promised more affordable housing in this city. To date, hasn't done that. Hopefully, when he's reelected, he'll do that, and maybe can ask Herb for some help. The LAHNS, preserving, I'm sorry.
Go on, Chuck, I'm sorry.
Preserving families in homes. They're doing a 25-year celebration at the Beverly Hilton. Brochure was sent to all the poor, low-income families that had rehab done by them that was funded by the LA Housing Department, yet it cost $300 to attend. Pretty steep for a ticket, yet all the staff goes for free. And what does the sponsor do with the money? And I'll bet the LA Housing Department gets invited for free, and yet everybody has to pay $300, and that's sad. They say Herb keeps a faithful and watchful eye on housing issues and the kids' well-being, and he always seems to lead the way for all of us, with one exception. The Midnight Basketball League, Herb's two teams, are long shots at best, but they say that his team will take a win any way they can. And Stop the Violence, We Can All Live in Peace, Janice Hahn's song project to fund programs for the kids. Several schools across the U.S., 3rd and 4th grade classes, have done projects critiquing the words to the song and recorded the song that they learned in one day, and they want to participate. On top of that, Larry Frank from the mayor's office, for every 3,000 copies distributed, the mayor will get 1,000. I hope Herb seconds that. The Marine Life Protection Act is going to cost the local economy $100 million in losses and $20 million in city taxes, plus the loss of jobs, businesses, and it will hit the port of Los Angeles hard because of private funding bailing out the state. And finally, the housing development projects on Magnolia Boulevard in Valley Village, what a mess and what a shame. a 4-story project that should have been a 3-story, had 6 feet of water in the second level of the underground parking, and they say, gee, you know what, we made a mistake. And the 2 buildings at 11927, they're trying desperately to give it away to the banks. Gee, Herb, maybe something can be done. They can't get rid of it, and people are looking at it, and there's 2 buildings there, and they want to refurbish it, and they're desperately trying to get the banks to buy it, and the banks don't want it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. And just so, you know, let's be clear on the midnight basketball. One of the teams from the area that I'm fortunate enough to represent made it to the championship game, where they played a team from Janice Hahn's district, and they got the snot beat out of them, but I was proud of them anyway. I mean, that was a great game for like 38 seconds. The other guys just, but we made it. Last year, we did not make it to the final. Hey, yeah, everybody's looking forward to them. Thank you. Ms. Barclay, I think that brings us to item 11.
Sir, item 11 is a report from the mayor relative to the 2009-2010 program year 35 Housing and Community Development Consolidated Plan, second year action plan.
Okay, let's come forward. Oh, don't break anything. We don't have the money to fix it. Okay, who's gonna
I'll start.
lead this team?
I'll start. Hi, Larry Frank. Morning, council members. I'm going to pinch hit for Helmy this morning, who's ill this morning. First, I'd like to apologize for the lateness of the comp plan to this year. I will take responsibility for about 3 weeks of that problem, trying to get the human service delivery system redesigned through the mayor's office. It's been a long process internally to get that done. It doesn't defend it. It's just a little bit of explanation. Basically, the other problems, we had less money this year, not significantly less, about $6 million less, primarily because of reprogramming, or not, fewer program dollars. And we do have a supplemental coming, so I can give you some details on the supplemental from the stimulus, which would be of interest to you guys. And then, we are operating under a continuing authority, so we should not have any interruption in service to our nonprofit contractors, but it does still sort of require an expedited process to get it through on April 1st.
What did we call that in the state? What was that, something resolution?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
basically same thing?
Yeah. So the overall picture is we have about $6 million less. I'll let the professionals speak, in detail. I'll just take another 2 minutes to kind of give you a big picture look. We got about $6 million less in the con plan this year than we did last year. We also had to address the additional related costs. So CDD's related costs went from 49% to 58% this year. So that's reflected throughout the con plan as well. I'm not sure what LAHD's numbers are. And we were able to put some money into economic development, so you'll see that in the plan, especially a slant towards some small business focus in this plan. And then the big picture was taking the human service delivery system, about $25 million between CSBG and CDBG dollars. We're going to continue contracts for 6 months. We're proposing that, and we're asking for support through council as we redesign the plan and build the metrics and accountability that we have on the workforce side and bring it over to the human service delivery side. And a lot of you, I think, have already been briefed on the overall plan there. And in terms of the supplemental from the stimulus, we should be getting information really soon, but our best guess is that the $1 billion in CDBG in the stimulus would amount to about $17 million to the city in additional CDBG dollars, and the $1 billion in CSBG should amount to somewhere between $7 and $9 million to the city, one-time expenditure that we will have to reprogram this year. And so we're looking forward to getting you a proposal much more timely as quick as we can. So,
Rhonda Gaston, Mayor's Office. And piggybacking on what the deputy mayor said, we do have about $6 million less in CDBG funding this year. And again, that's the result of having lesser carry-in savings this year. Last year, there was an all-out effort to ensure that there was adequate amount of savings to cover for a drop in program income. We weren't able to have as much savings this year as we did in the past. I think we carry for about $6.3 million rather than $12.8 last year. Because of the drop in overall CDBG, that also means a drop in our public services dollars. We had to come down in that particular budget category about $800,000. To compensate for that loss, the mayor's office proposed to shift particular line items to the CBDO category, where we were fairly certain that organizations could qualify in that category, and that's Fresh Food Access Program, which CDD has already qualified as a CBDO, and then the allocation that formerly went to the Bridges Program and is now allocated to the mayor's office Grid Initiative. There was a slight increase in the dollars that went to foreclosure prevention, and that's consistent with the mayor's direction to provide more money in the areas that would actually help the city residents overcome issues related to the recession. And public and special categories by CBDO, that allocation remains relatively same. There's about a $250,000 drop overall in the category. We've split the human service delivery system line items both in public services and in CBDO so that we show an extension of existing contracts and then in the latter part of the year a new system going forward. As the deputy mayor mentioned, in economic development, because of the efforts to carry forward substantial savings, we were able to accommodate a couple and maybe 3 economic development projects, specifically Marlton Square. That's a multi-phase project, and there is $1.7 million proposed for land acquisition relative to that. And then there's Bring Back Broadway Streetscape. We provided $1 million for the continuing efforts there. And housing and related programming, we did not provide any changes to the line items other than nominal tweaks to ensure that there was full cost recovery for the city going forward. But in terms of program, there's no impact to the programs that Housing Department would implement this year. For neighborhood improvements, there is one additional line item that was accommodated, and that's the Wattstar Theater. Again, this is a project that has received CDBG in the past, and we provided funding for the next phase of that project, and that is construction of the theater and the job training center, and that's a $2 million allocation. In the administrative and planning category, because that category is capped under federal statute to only allow us to expend 20%, that is the only category in the comp plan where full cost recovery is not anticipated. The mayor's letter actually goes into detail in explaining our theory behind that. Line items that were funded for direct salary only in the past are similarly funded this year. There are new line items, well, a couple of restored line items, including the planning department, to allow us to have the GIS mapping that we had in the past. We put a position back in that department, and also for the Community Redevelopment Agency, because that department actually administers a substantial amount of CDBG funding, and it had not in the past received CDBG money to actually track those expenditures and liaise with CDD. Money for a position in CRA is actually included as well. But in short, that is the CDBG budget. I would defer to the Housing Department to speak to the allocations on relative to the housing components, or open it to questions. I don't know if Richard has comments.
Mercedes, did you want to? Good morning.
Good morning. Mercedes Marquez from the Housing Department. What we understand from what we've received from the mayor's office, in terms of the home allocation, I guess the one area that we would have some concern about is using home dollars to repay Section 108. We're the only jurisdiction in the country that does that now, and HUD has made it clear to us and set a very high standard because they don't want anybody else doing it country, right? So they're actually trying to cut us off from this slowly. And what they've done is set a standard so that in order for us to use home money to repay 108 debt, we have to make sure that the loan is a home loan. So we've had to redo loans that we're using CDBG dollars to have them use home dollars. I can't tell you how that difficult that is. It means we have to go back in and redo the entire loan to transfer dollars. So we've brought down the amount. The debt service is now attributable to 36%. So we think that this long-term is not a solution, right? We may get away with it again this year, but we're soon, I believe, not going to get away with it. So this is something that we're going to face. Where we are on allocations,
So
it is...
Mercedes, if you're correct, and I'm sorry to cut you off.
Not at all, sir.
But I will probably forget this question. If you're correct, then what, we will be, we can't do this anymore, what options?
Well, that's what you have to look at the entire budgeting. I mean, that's something that comes, again, back to the mayor's office to make hard decisions about how you really cover it. But where we believe CPD is going is every year trying to cut us off to stop anybody else from doing it. So that's not an answer for me. That's an answer that goes back to the mayor's office to make that decision. We think in terms of CDBG allocation, we are pretty much kept at the same year, and that's because last year, we were cut so severely that we've held many positions. I'm still holding the assistant general manager position for all of major projects. I don't know how long we can continue to do that. That means that basically Yolanda Chavez, the executive officer, and myself do that job in addition to all the other things that we do. So this is now the second year that we've done that. That is not a long-term solution, but we did it because we didn't want to lay anyone off. So Yolanda and I just took on the other job. That's not going to work for much longer. What we think, though, is that we're running a structured deficit now. So last year, when we took the CDBG cuts and worked with the CAO and CLA, who did a marvelous job, we all knew that we were taking about a $500,000 structured deficit. We still have it. And at this point, we will have to continue to hold all the positions, including the AGM position. If the cap rates change, if they go up, we're in trouble, right? So they have to be at the same level. And we have to move some of the money. In other words, there is income that we receive from the bond income, the multifamily bond program. It is income that is flexible, so that we've used it for moderate home buyers, right? All the things that federal dollars we can't use it for. We're in a position now where we absolutely have to use it to cover admin costs. So every year we're slicing more and more of any flexibility that the housing department has. So that means we're now using our best dollars to cover salaries. Not a good idea, but that's what we have to do. That means, though, that we have to leave that funding there and not use it for something else, right? So that as we go through the regular city budgeting process, we have to leave that money there because it now has to cover admin costs, as opposed to changing the ordinance. That at the moment, the city ordinance requires that all income from the multiple housing program, from that bond program, come to the housing department. It can be changed as part of the regular budget, but if we do that, there won't be any money to cover these admin costs. So at this point, what we're facing, again, housing department is always in the situation of analyzing the con plan and the regular budget at the same time. And like we are always in this situation, we face a problem again this year, that the 18 positions that make up the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, from all, we faced this last year, from all of the accountants that pushed through all those millions of dollars to do the underwriting, are neither covered, the salaries are neither covered in the con plan, nor are they covered right now in the Blue Book. So we're back in the same position as we were last year, and as a result of that, I just ask that as we move through it, we take a look all together to make sure that we're covering those costs, so that we don't shift anything else until we cover those salaries. That's kind of where we are.
Richard, did you want to?
Yeah, just a couple of comments.
And Mercedes, you're going to hang around, I'm sure.
Sure, don't you?
Just a couple of brief comments. As was noted by Deputy Mayor Frank, once again, we note that our block grant dollars have shrunk considerably about $6 million this year. It continues to present challenges to us in terms of serving the many people who are in need, and that additionally, we are faced again with the escalating cap rate and related costs that severely restrict our ability to conduct programs in what we think is the best possible way. I am, however, encouraged by the increase in allocation for economic development. We think this is a very important area of our activities that would help us get through some of these tough economic times. We need jobs, and that a more investment in economic development will help us do that. We're also encouraged somewhat, as Mr. Deputy Mayor Frank indicated, the funds that we expect from the Recovery Act that would help us to overcome some of the challenges that we're faced by this particular budget. However, that money's not available right now, and it will subsequently be distributed in a number of areas that can help us.
Hey, Mr. Deputy Mayor Frank, is my understanding that the mayor's office was looking into a way to deal with this cap issue, and that there was some kind of report or something that was supposed to come out? Where are we with that? Or if you're not aware, can you see that I get that information?
Yeah. Do you have anything, Rhonda?
It's a report that was requested both by the mayor's office and your committee, asking that the CAO do a study on the cap as it relates to the city's financial policies and any particular adverse impact to primarily grant-funded agencies. I believe the CAO has issued a preliminary report, but the final report has yet to come. But I think CAO may be in the room and can give more information.
Sorry, Anime Utem from the CAO. The CAP report will probably be out at the same time that the joint report from the CAO and the CLA will come back for the consolidated plan. So you will hear it.
So did you fix it?
I can't say that. I didn't write the report, sir, but it will be out in time for when you hear the joint CAO and CLA report on the
Yeah,
comp
like
plan.
Mr. Reyes, my dear friend to my right, said, can we get a preview? I mean, really, could we get a...
We will have, I'll talk to our front office and we'll see if we could have it released maybe sometime next week.
That'd be good. That was a legitimate question. I mean, you could just say draft or preliminary and subject to change. Mr. Bimbo.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Franks indicated that there's been some additional cost where related to your department. I don't know if it was admin or whatever, but it went from like 49% to 58%.
That's the controller's judgment about related costs, so that's benefits on top of every individual CDD employee that's working on any comp plan related programs, but they add in the related costs of the mayor's office, council office, controller's office, the attorney's office.
So it went up 10% on that?
That's what the controller determined, which is quite a hardship on all especially grant-funded departments that are. So that's
need to have somebody check up behind her on that.
Yeah.
That does, all joking aside, that seems high to me. So if I remember what you said, I think you said there was like 16 or 17 million in stimulus money coming in one pot and 8 or 9 in
CSBG.
the other. How do you guys see spending that? I mean, since it, maybe if we're lucky, there may be something next year, but who knows if it will be as big or if we'll get it at all. So what are you going to do with the one-time money?
Yeah.
Or what did we,
So we're putting a proposal together right now, and I think we have an obligation to get you a preview of that as well. Yeah.
Because that's something that we would want to look at.
Yeah.
I would think we would want to, fill whatever holes or gaps that we can, but we want to be careful not to put ourselves in a situation where we're gambling on the fact that we might get some more money or what have you. Miss Perry and then Mr. Reyes. Miss Perry.
Maybe Mr. Reyes.
Okay, are you sure?
Well, I like
I mean, he does not. Mr. Reyes, you missed it. He does not skateboard, so I really think you should go first and he should go second until he gets his skateboard on.
Okay, quick question. And then Mr. Frank, I appreciate your frankness. Thank you. Appreciate that very much. I just wanted to know the strategy in place for any advanced funding, and I just wanted you to put this on the record and the extent of the dialogue with the mayor's office, with the Budget and Finance Committee, to make sure that, while we go through this process, the contracts don't fall through the cracks, and that we are being proactive and working with Budget and Finance Committee.
Yeah, well, I will make a commitment to use all my effort in that direction, but maybe I would ask Rhonda if she could actually speak to it in terms of the process. Again, I'm pinch hitting for Helmy on this one, but because of my activity with the Human Service Delivery System, I'm deeply involved, more deeply involved in this process.
I'm asking the mayor's office to work directly with Budget and Finance to make sure that we are tracking together.
Yeah.
Definitely, yes.
Okay, the other questions, a couple of quick comments, and it won't take very long, Mr. Chair. I want the CLA to report back to this committee on Council File 060053 regarding a draft ordinance that would amend the Los Angeles Admin Code, Section 14.6, to add a requirement specifying the time for submission of the proposed con plan for the Department of Housing and Urban Development grant to City Council. Now, I understand that the ordinance has already been drafted and it needs to be adopted. So I would like to know whether or not I can get a second from one of my colleagues on the committee. So I got a second from Mr. Reyes, Mr. Chair, on that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I have a second on that. So I would like to be able to vote on that draft ordinance. A couple of other quick items. There's $107,532 in new funding allocated to the CRA for the administration of CDBG funds. And my question is, I thought we were not adding new programs this year, and therefore I am concerned that this is a duplication of CDD's work, and I'd like a report back on that from the CLA. There's 2 projects in Council District 9 that are being counted as reprogramming funds or program income. The first one is the sale of property at 58th and Hoover, and the other one is the sale of property at Slauson and Maine. I want to make sure that those funds are available to qualified projects in CD9, and I want the CLA to report back on the best way to do that, because in this council district, my council district, we have plenty of shovel-ready projects that can use these projects immediately. So, I'm not interested in setting aside money for things that are not shovel-ready. Finally, the mayor's letter asked the chief legislative analyst to identify $4 million for homeless programs in Central City East. Now, I know that we took care of a portion of that, and I think it was $1.5 million with AB 1290 funds. However, I want to request that the chief legislative analyst work with the redevelopment agency on identifying the remaining amount. And those are the questions I want reports back on, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that's
Thank you.
Legitimate concerns. Before I turn it over to Mr. Reyes, given that we do have this pot of one-time monies, you may want to, not may want to, but if you would look into some kind of foreclosure prevention program or some kind of job retention or creation program, that might be a wise way to spend monies that we may only get for one time. But with that, Mercedes, were you kind of, it looked like you've been wanting to say something, or did I misread you? Okay, all right, so now, Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did receive a letter from the mayor, and it stated that no new projects would be considered. But I'd like to know how many new projects are being proposed for funding and why, given that we were given this letter that have a certain direction, and yet something else happened. So just want to understand why did that occur and why that funding level.
At the time the mayor's policy letter was issued last November, we anticipated a $16 million shortfall in CDBG. We were not able to project how much savings we'd be able to derive and be able to put back into the CDBG budget. But based on the efforts of CDD under the direction of the mayor's office, we were able to identify $6.3 million. So that closed our deficit from $16 million down to $6 million. with that additional $10 million, we were able to ensure that we did not have to drop funding in the administrative and planning category. We had initially anticipated we'd have to go down $700,000 in that category. We did not. I think there was a nominal decrease of about $34,000. So with the additional funding, we were able to fund some projects. I would not necessarily categorize them as new because they have been funded with CDBG in the past for pre-development cost. Without us going forward with funding those projects, it's my understanding from CDD staff that that would then become an admin hit to the CDBG budget. We cannot afford to add cost to that particular category, so the mayor's office chose to fund the projects so that they could be completed. And those two projects were Marlton and Watts Star.
In terms of, I'm assuming the report you're working on, when it comes to the service cap, that that'll give us the latest in terms of our direction and how we're going to deal with that whole dynamic, correct?
Within this budget, we are actually complying with the federal cap. We are at the 15%. On top of that, the city has historically used the strategy to categorize particular agencies in their work as CBDO, so we are in compliance right now. But with the stimulus money coming in, assuming it has the same regulation as our regular appropriation of CDBG, we would be able to use 15% of the $17 million that Deputy Mayor Frank spoke to for public services type activities.
So I guess, so are we saying that we will be asking to lift the cap given the federal stimulus funding that we anticipate? Is that what you're saying?
No, with the federal stimulus money that's coming down, it will likely have the same regulations as our regular appropriation, which means utilize 15%. But going forward as a long-term strategy, the mayor is continuing his dialogue with key congressional members to ensure that the city has a greater amount of flexibility in funding public services projects. But I believe the intent is to do that when the CDBG Act comes forward for reauthorization.
Currently, we have this sense of anticipation from our service providers and as to what's going to happen, and there's a lot of nervousness out there. And I have a senior center that essentially we received calls that they were directed to cut back senior meals. And I know that under the reprogramming piece, about 103 to 100,000 is reprogrammed away from the Department of Aging. I believe that's the figure. How are we sweeping, or how are we looking at these funds when we're restructuring these funding programs for the Department of Aging?
We're actually not proposing any changing to aging. Looking at the comp plan, which would be attachment C in the mayor's letter, the aging delivery system would be line item 5. Last year, they received $400,000 for the types of programs you just spoke to. The mayor's office budget holds that steady. Additionally, complementing that line item number 28 provides $1.2 million, and the mayor's proposal keeps that line item steady as well.
So we need to touch bases with you or someone that can tell us what direction is being given to the Department of Aging, because we are getting calls that meals are being cut back. And so how we are alerting our service providers to these cutbacks and what that means to delivery of services is something that's, I know, very detailed, but for our beneficiaries, having a meal or not having a meal would make a difference of them eating or not. I don't sound so dramatic, but such are the dire consequences in our communities right now. And so how we are providing that message, what we're saying to them, I would hope the council office could be clued in as to how that message is being given to our service providers, because they will be calling our offices, and it's bad enough we say, well, we don't have any money, but the money we do have, how we're implementing that, and not to understand how it's being structured or how we're instructing our departments and their services really puts, I think, the council at a disadvantage and a rather embarrassing situation at times.
And I agree with you, Council Member. The mayor's intent with this comp plan budget going in and as proposed was to hold all public services project study and not to decrease any services, particularly because of the national recession and the economic conditions. But I will speak with my colleagues back in the office. Maybe that is a conversation that is ongoing because of the city budget side, but it was not proposed within the comp plan.
Okay, so someone said
Yeah.
there was an instruction given, and someone held back meals, and seniors are asking why is this happening? And we,
You know, Mr. Reyes, let me jump in. See, that's really serious. Can somebody give this committee an answer, I mean, a specific answer to that question next week? And I really hate to, I mean, and if you get the answer before then, call Mr. Reyes's office. If there's something on the city budget side that's making that happen, then we need to know that, because my guess is if you're getting the calls, Mr. Reyes, it's just a matter of time before Ms. Perry gets them and I get them and other people. Now, up to this point, I have not. But that's something that, let's please get that back to us, and I'm sorry to cut you off.
I know there's a lot on our plate, and there's issues we're struggling with, but I think clarity and communication and just an added consciousness towards the courtesy of informing the different offices will go a long way in preventing miscommunication or tensions unnecessarily. So I appreciate that very much.
And it's my understanding, Ms. Perry.
Yeah, just two more quick questions. Let's see. First, I guess this is for Mercedes. If you could just clarify on the record if the position of Assistant General Manager for the Housing Department is needed, and work with the CLA to report back on that particular issue.
Well, yes, it's the Assistant General Manager position is major projects. That's where the trust fund is, it's where the New Generation Fund is, it's where all the rehab is, it's where all the foreclosure prevention is. So we have no Assistant General Manager for 2 years. So that only means that Ms. Chavez and I do, everything. And I guess, thank you for asking. If money were to be found for that, I guess I would have to say that I would consider it the LAHD Executive Staff Exhaustion Relief Act.
All right. Well, okay, great. All right, so if we can get a report back from the CLA on that. And another quick thing, I think the issue of housing, indicating that HUD has provided additional guidance relative to a proportion of Section 108 debt service that might be eligible for repayment with home funds. Of course, this might result in a need to shift a portion of the obligation to CDBG. Now, in order to avoid future HUD findings of ineligible expenses, I would like to ask the CLA and the CAO to review this issue, provide recommendations in their report back to the committee to tell us how we can make sure that this ineligibility issue doesn't arise over and over and over again.
Ms. Perry, are you, Mr. Reyes?
Yes, if we can get the CLA report back on any funding shortfalls related to the Department of Aging in this contract year, that's something we can get back, that would be helpful.
And again, I just want to reinforce the desire to see the creation, or at least a conversation about the creation of programs to deal with foreclosure and job retention and creation. Any more questions?
I do.
Reyes, go right ahead.
Mercedes, in terms of when we look at the need for our citizenry, the folks who don't speak English, who have cultural differences in how we deal with authority figures, the ability to have a technical assistance or counseling and how to prepare for loans and housing. I know we have nonprofits out there that do this work, but we also know that these are the same nonprofits who are in the bullseye for cutbacks, and they're losing funds, they're losing ground because of the lack of funding currently. would the housing department consider if we were to structure a service and have a sliding scale, a sliding fee that allows for the individual to pay what they can, but hopefully have enough volume to offset the cost of the personnel to provide the service? If it came out of the city, or at least based in the city, it seems to me that would give added confidence of folks who need that service, given the turmoil we're going through right now. Is that possible?
I know that your office is very concerned about this. I am too. I've been thinking about what do you do for this delivery system. It's only getting worse.
Right.
And if I would, we've been speaking through staff, and so I haven't had the opportunity to speak to you. This is what I think we should try. In New York City, they have set up a series of nonprofits, much like the holding company that was approved by you all to do the actual acquisition and disposition of property purchased by foreclosures. There is now a second entity that I've been looking at, and it's not about property, it's about people and services. And what they've done is start a city nonprofit that focuses in their admin dollars, and they've put together the home counseling funds, right, the foreclosure counseling funds. They've put together the issues of all the multi-agency problems of closing down blighted properties, so it would be a place where building and safety and others would all work together on information, right? And it would be a place that as we go through this and what I believe will come from the federal government on foreclosures, a place where loans could be reviewed in an objective manner. My sense is that we should move in that direction, and that perhaps, Councilman, we haven't had this discussion either yet, but I know that you have an interest, and I heard you just express it to the Deputy Mayor, about what to do with one-time CDBG funds as it relates to foreclosures. This might be a way, because what we're lacking is any one place where people can go beyond the physical asset. And there are many good efforts. There are many, many good efforts. But we don't have one place as this problem kind of proliferates for people to call to get this kind of analysis. I would rather go there. I believe that if LHD would do it, it is not, I never say no to work.
Right.
So that's not what it is. But I think that the cost of having city staff do this is incredibly expensive. And I don't believe that given the sliding scale and given what you're seeing here in the budget, that that I have the room to be overly generous and to just say to you, yes, I'll find a way. I don't see in this con plan, because all of those positions are funded with con plan dollars,
Right.
I don't see where I have the elasticity to make that offer and be as straightforward as I always am with you. I just don't see that I can.
But again, you have made a very astute observation. We do have potential, given a one-time fund, maybe as a seed fund, that essentially triggers a magnet, if you will, where we can challenge the banks. They have their CRAs issues, which I, quite frankly, have a lot of problems having any real confidence in, given what they're doing with or not doing with the money. And I just think that at this stage, the folks who are re-administering the loans are the same people that drafted the initial loans that got into this problem. So you have the fox in the hen house right now.
Well, you've hit it on the head. You've hit the nail. There's no question that there is a tremendous need, and that the issue of a lack of confidence and a lack of knowing where to go. What I'm watching is that in different parts of the city, there are different organizing efforts that are being made. Right? In the Northeast Valley, in Pacoima, IAF is doing a huge effort out there. I'm speaking to them quite regularly. But we do need to think about this more citywide. Certainly in the Northeast Valley, in South Los Angeles, and your part of the city, and East LA. There are real hot spots, and we could use a way to organize this. There are individual efforts of whether it's legal aid or it's ELAC or it's Pacoima, all over the place. But we don't have the money that helps glue them together in one delivery system. We don't have that.
Well, to be constructive in this dialogue, if I could put forth a motion that, and I would ask my colleagues in this committee if they would second, that triggers that direction, that sets that direction to identify that entity, but give you enough flexibility, the mayor's office, hopefully, to create a focal point that addresses this need. Because, I mean, when I still recall when President Clinton came in with his empowerment zone funds, the main reason why I believe it did not take off is we did not provide technical assistance to the individuals in our empowerment zones to really grasp what that money could do. And we spent a lot of money and a lot of time figuring out what we were doing wrong, and ended up spending very little I think we didn't get the biggest bang for the buck.
You're right. I mean, given what the president's plan, as he unveiled it last week on loan modifications, right? So far, I have not seen money that is directed at cities to help coordinate a strategy. There's no money in that for that, right? So it's aimed at capital relief, at paying, in terms of interest buy downs. It's aimed at that. The money that's set aside in ESG for rental payments is really meant for those families who are foreclosed on, who now have to become renters and need help, or tenants across the country who are foreclosed on. They have not yet taken. LA is still the only city in the country who actually passed a moratorium on evictions. So we need to speak back to the federal government about, you should be pushing that rather than putting out all this, putting out rental subsidies when you could just stop it and save a lot of money. So but you're right. We're going to have tons of questions about loan modifications, but we have no money to help organize a discussion, and we could have a real mess on our hands just because of a lack of...
Is it realistic, and I'd like to ask the mayor's staff here, is it realistic that if we put forth a motion that says to come back in either 2 weeks or 30 days with a strategy that speaks to whatever funds might have some flexibility to be that initial seed fund, is that something that you could see yourselves exploring, given the context of this discussion?
I really should defer to Helmi on this, and I will go and talk to her. I will call her today, and I will get you an answer, as soon as I can. It seems like a reasonable piece of work. The issue I would have is it's an extremely expensive piece of work to how to do it, and there are some great organizations out there that are actually taking the lead, that we are partnering with our Foreclosure Action Network, with a few pieces. I know there's a small increase in the CDBG proposal right now to address that, but I am hearing from both Councilmember Weston and Reyes that foreclosure is a big piece of what you would like to see the CDBG dollars from the stimulus to help address. So I will translate that. I just don't feel competent to speak for the mayor's office on that issue right now.
Well, hopefully maybe by this end of today, when the council put forth a motion, if not the next council meeting, and to address this issue, and hopefully we'll get this moving. But
now we'll see. I agree with Mr. Reyes, and certain things, in my opinion, we shouldn't need to do a motion to get the answers.
Right.
But if I would support Mr. Reyes in this motion. The only thing that I don't want us to do is to, speculate on how costly this would be.
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer to have this vetted, and then you come back, let us know the price tag, and then we'll debate or have a conversation about if we should try to move forward with that. I wouldn't want us to kind of close the door without us getting the facts. So if Mr. Reyes wanted to do a motion, I would be very supportive of that. But I would hope, given the financial crisis and the times that we find ourselves in, that we could do things without motions, that we should be as proactive as we possibly could, and if a request is made, because in some respects, the motion process slows things down, in my view. So we need to have the kind of working relationship where, I should feel comfortable in saying, Richard, I need for you to look at this and know that you're going to do it without some piece of paper that dictates that you do it.
I'd be happy to convene a conversation between our staffs within a week.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I just want to make sure it doesn't, sometimes we say things in committee and they kind of float away.
Yep.
And unless you write it down and put it in a motion form or directive, it doesn't get any real traction. And I know that doesn't happen a lot. It just, to me, the seriousness is so grave, and learning from experience in the past of how we could be more functional and literally leverage what little dollars we have to create the kind of service that our community needs. I think it's now. I mean, it's happening now. So we'll move forward.
Well, let me clarify. So our staff, I mean your staff and the mayor's staff. So I'd be happy to put that together if that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Yep.
That would be good, because I know Mr. Reyes his staff would program with my staff,
Yep.
and I'm very comfortable with that. Any more questions? Then, without objection, we will continue this item and request that the CLA and the CAO report back on March 25th. With that said, thank you very, very much. Ms. Barclay, is there any more business before this committee?
No, sir.
Then this committee is adjourned. Thank you to everyone.